Hello, and welcome to The Secret Life of Therapists. I'm your host, Dr. Habiba Zaman. I have Dr. Stephen here with me. Hello again. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited. Yeah, I've been really looking forward to this again. Yeah.
Yes. Well, Dr. Stephen, he is a therapist. He's an author. He's an entrepreneur, and he is fellow traveler through life. We're just trying to figure it out, right? Navigating our life and
Yeah,
seeing what it means.
that's a beautiful term. Traveler. We're traveling along this journey. In fact, I was just telling you, I'm starting this new philosophy, which is all about being a traveler and sharing the journey with other travelers. So that was perfect. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah.
I'm excited to be traveling along this journey with you.
Thank you. Same. We were talking a little bit earlier because you guys all know that we have our own little thing before I actually press record, just catching up and all that fun jazz. And I was thinking, how wonderful would it be to have Dr. Stephen share his journey and also the definition of what he thinks it is to be a man these days. The definition has changed so much. The expectations of what it means to be a man, the demands for what people think it's supposed to be. And I think overall, both men and women are struggling with the changes in how you're supposed to adapt now and what that means.
I agree, I'm 66, so I'm not like I've gone through quite a few generations. And what I was taught as a kid probably isn't the same as what a lot of men are taught, but I do think there's a thread, that men are, taught, and I could be wrong about the most recent generation, but we're supposed to be the protector. We're supposed to be the provider, right? And of course, that has changed a lot in the mind of many women. Now, again, I always say I hate to generalize, which is a good thing to say before you generalize, right? Those would be considered more traditional roles, right? Whereas now, again, I'm generalizing, a lot of women, maybe most, I don't know, I haven't done a study on it, but many women want to be independent. They don't want to be with a man to protect them. And they don't necessarily want to be with a man to provide for them. That's a big change.
That's also different, for protection, typically, right? Like, who are you as in men, right? This mentality of we need to protect our women, but protect them from whom?
Okay, well, great point. But, I just watched, I used to work with Tony Robbins. And I was watching an event that he just put on recently, and I don't know, there was like 20, there's at least 20,000 people there, maybe 30, right? And so he's down in the, in the audience, and he's working with, as he does live therapy, right in front of everybody's eyes, and it's amazing, right? So at one point, he asked the audience, he said, "How many men, raise your hand, how many men here in the last 30 days have felt unsafe?" I don't know, out of 30,000, maybe 6 hands raised, right? And then he said, "Now, how many women, by raise of hand, in the last 30 days have felt unsafe?" Nearly every hand in the audience went up.
Precisely.
So women do feel unsafe. And understand.
But that's my point, though. It is, we do feel unsafe, 100%.
Absolutely.
It's just, but safe from whom? Unsafe from whom, right?
Well,
We're feeling unsafe from other men because the ones who are committing the violence against women are typically men, statistically, all around.
I agree.
And so,
Yeah.
I agree, right? It's nice to feel protected. All of my male friends, my partner, you name it, right? Like,
Yeah.
they're always my children. I have 2 boys. So, I was in a jam. I busted out the front tire and the back tire at the same time recently.
Yeah, well
On my
done.
way back from the airport, and I just landed from a week-long vacation that I took myself on, and then that's what I come back to.
Yeah.
And so my son came, and he was riding back with me after we put the donuts on, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then we had to get gas because his car didn't have gas in it. And when we pulled up, it was a sketchy part of, the city. It is just what it is. And he goes, "I'm getting out.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to draw more attention. I'm going to get out. I'm going to get the gas," right? So that need to protect his mom, that was so sweet. I told him I was like, I appreciate that, but you're gonna sit here and you're just gonna watch from the inside. Mommy's more reactive than you are. I will burn somebody down if I need to with this hose. Right. So, and I was like, and that's just from experience, and that's just from living life and all of that. I love you for offering, though. So I appreciate that, right? Willing and wanting to be the protectors. But again, the people that he was saying that I would need not to get the attention or draw attention from were the men that were standing outside of this gas station.
Sure. And
So
that's
I think it's one of those.
That's also my point, Habiba.
Yeah.
Is that women are not afraid of other women. They're afraid of men, right?
Right.
But what it does confirm is, and so this is where men are getting mixed signals. Women say, I don't need a man. Yes, you do. Yes, you do in this world. That's human nature. And you're going against nature if you say that, right? So women need to be protected, period. It's just a fact, right?
But if you train men and teach men to be teaching other men that these behaviors are not acceptable.
Well, you can do that. But again, you're going against.
It wouldn't be I need a man because I need them to protect me. It would be, I need a man for all the other things that they provide.
Of course, but that's a primary need. And trying to convince or train every man on earth to be the way we want him to be, you're going against nature, right?
Against nature to be violent?
Well, look around you. Nature is violent. All part of nature is violent. Every animal in the animal kingdom at times is violent. Violence is there.
At times, but the majority of violence is committed against women. That's what I'm saying. That's the mentality that needs to change. Instead of reinforcing it with, we need men to be the protectors against men, the mentality needs to be, we don't do that to people.
It's not going to happen, right? You're working against nature, right? Men are more aggressive than women, period. They just are. And some men are always going to be wider on the scale. You're not going to be able to create a scale that you want, right? Some men are going to be very weak. They're not going to be aggressive. They're going to be very, part of their feminine nature is going to be greater. Some of them are going to be more masculine. But what you're trying to do is
masculinity doesn't equate violence against others.
Say that again.
Masculinity doesn't equate to being violent against others.
Okay, well, look at the history of the world, Habiba.
Right. Again, but there's also that acceptance, right? It was acceptable to be violent. It was acceptable to beat your woman. It was acceptable to rape whenever you felt like it, right? All of those expectations, as people evolve, right? That's a societal expectation that has become now that's not acceptable. I don't think it's fair to say that men can't control their impulses.
Well, women can't either. We've got impulses. We have natural impulses. You can't put
as a therapist, right? You're teaching people to understand that and behave in a way that's acceptable.
But if you think you're going to change every man on earth for the next millennia, it's not going to happen. You've got to.
But I also think that then that's giving it this pass that because you can't change them, which you can't, behaviors change, right? Behaviors have changed. But that makes it acceptable for people to say, well, this is just how it's going to be. So it removes accountability.
No, I don't agree. It doesn't make it acceptable. It just means dealing with reality, right? It means
no. As of right now, that's still the reality. I understand that.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that we're not going to continue to try and work on making men less likely to commit violence against a woman. I'm just saying we've got to deal with now, right? What's going on now while we continue to do that. But at this current point in reality, the reality is there's a lot of men, not most men, and I think men get maligned a lot. There are men that commit violence against women. That's just a fact. You can't change that right now. You can't get every single man on earth into a room and flip a switch, right? It's not going to happen.
But how do we change men that think it's going to be okay to do that? What do you think that is? Like, how would it be because there's studies that show that when a woman is being mistreated by another man, it's typically a woman that stands up. Other men will see it happening and just like, I'm not going to get into this fight because of they just don't want to fight.
Yeah.
But then they're also not doing holding the man accountable to say, what are you doing? This is not okay.
That's what I'm saying. It's a two-sided thing. Women tolerate violence. They make it okay. They give the man permission because they don't stand up and say, I'm out of here. I'm leaving. This is not going to be happening. And many women stay in toxic and physically abusive relationships.
I don't think that's the same thing as giving them permission. I don't
Yes.
think any woman says, go ahead and beat me right now.
Again, I disagree with you. If a woman stays, she's agreeing to it. It's okay. If a woman lets
But
a
she's
man
also staying for a lot of societal constraints because of those constraints. Because financially, she can't leave right now. She has children with this
can
person.
leave. I don't care if she's got children. She can leave. And staying is teaching the child the wrong thing. She has to leave. And there's no such thing as she can't.
But again, here you are, the responsibility on the victim instead of on the aggressor.
Let me finish your thought for a second. It's just the saying a woman can't leave as a man can't help hitting her. It's ridiculous.
No. I'm not saying women can't leave. I'm saying there are reasons that prevent a woman from being able to leave when they want to, just because the first time it happens.
But that's an excuse. It's an excuse.
It's not so.
Yes, it is. I don't care what the situation.
Children, they're going to starve and you have nowhere to go.
Let me finish your thought. This is a great conversation, but let me finish your thought, right? So yes. I get this all the time, with women saying, I can't leave. I don't have a car. I don't have any money. It doesn't matter. There's a way for them to leave. And if we say they can't, we're feeding into their idea and belief they can't leave. Yes, they can. There is a way to leave. There's always a way. But if we, especially as therapists, say, no, you're right, you can't leave right now, we're making it worse because we're telling them that they are hopeless and helpless, and they're not, right? I've had so many people.
Typically, therapists help other people get to that point. They don't just say, go ahead and stay.
Of course we can. We're not going to just say leave today in this minute, right? You're going to just walk out and he's standing outside with an axe. But there are ways for them to be able to leave, and I've done it many times. That's a decision, right? To say I'm going to stay because of the kids, that's the wrong reason to stay. You should not.
I think you misunderstood me. I'm saying that they can't leave right away because they have children. They need to be able to take the children to a home. They need to be able to feed the children. They need to be able to provide for them.
Yes, of course. All right, but we're not talking about.
I'm not saying that that's the reason why they stay. I'm saying there are reasons why they can't leave right away.
Okay, well, when you first said it, you said they can't leave, right? So right away is an add-on to what you said. So yes,
there's also, as a therapist, that we do help them get through that. But there's also that mentality in the beginning where there's hope that he wasn't like this before. Maybe he'll be different. Maybe this is a thing, right? There's this denial in the beginning, especially with domestic violence, when you look at the studies, before they can get to the stages of change to be able to make that move.
All right. And
but
so
all of that is taking away
the accountability
from the person that's doing the abusing.
Here's my perception right now. You're taking the woman's side and not the man's, right? So we've got to be neutral, right? We've got to be neutral because it will also take time for the man to change his behavior. But here we are in a situation where maybe she will, maybe he will, but we're not dealing with reality. You don't want to be with someone because they might become the person you want. You have
no, I'm saying the accountability is still, all of this was, the woman should then leave. Absolutely. I agree with you. They will, and they do. Eventually they get to a point where they're able to. But the comment needs to be, men shouldn't be doing this. That shouldn't be an acceptable behavior.
But
just like it's not acceptable to go around killing people.
On the same road. What she's doing is not acceptable and has got to change. And what he is doing is not acceptable and has to change. It's not one or the other, right?
No, I agree with you. But that's what I'm saying. As far as the protector goes.
Share back with you what you just said, right? What you said was the woman is not in a position to be able to leave, and she's, sometimes she stays longer than she should, so on and so forth. That's what needs to change. He is obviously physically abusing her. That needs to change, but it's not one, it's both of them. Right. And what I would say in this situation, if someone's being physically abusive, it's just not a negotiable. It's just not. You have to leave. How is this person going to learn that this is not acceptable if you accept it and say, well, and this is what most women say. No, I don't know about most, but a lot of women say, well, you don't know him. He's a really nice guy. And you get a trauma bond because now he's beating her. And then afterwards, he's love bombing her. And so now she puts up with the violence to get the love, right? I mean, that's what happens in a lot of cases, rather than say, let me look at the situation as it really is right now. I can't control what he will do in the future, but I can control what I do now. And while I may not be able to leave today, I am going to make a decision that I am going to leave and I'm not going to stay in this relationship. Because until she's done that, there's no help. There's nothing that's going to change. There's no way to help her.
Right. No, I'm agreeing with everything that you're saying with that. That was my point, that women aren't just choosing to just stay because this is fun, right? There's usually other things that are in play before they can get to a point where they leave. That was my point. They're not just, they're being beaten because they're allowing it. I think that's
here's the danger, right? That if you say that, you're making their excuse real. They have
it's
to.
Not an excuse, though.
Yes,
that's what I'm trying to say. You just said, yeah, eventually they will get it all together.
I didn't say eventually, because that's probably never going to happen, right? It has to happen in the moment where they make a decision.
Where will they go? Some women don't have anyone else to turn to.
I gotta let me finish. It begins with a decision. Would you agree? Them leaving begins with a decision. It doesn't happen today, but you made a decision. You are going to leave. And then you can start creating a plan for how that happens.
That's literally what I'm saying. You and I are saying the exact same thing.
But a little bit, but not quite. You're saying eventually she might be able to leave, but she can't.
Eventually, as in when she has everything in place. The decision is made then.
I don't have the keys to get in the house. I can find a way into the house, right? I might not be able to do the second, but it's going to be somewhere in the relative near future. I'm not just going to stand outside and hope that something happens so I can get in the house. And so
that's what I'm saying as well. That's what I meant by eventually.
This is what I'm hearing. You're saying, this is what I heard, and I could be wrong, so I'm going to clarify. What I heard you say was, the woman can't leave. She can't leave. She can't leave right now, so maybe she will eventually. No, that's not acceptable. What she has to say. That's not
what I'm saying.
Okay,
I'm saying when she gets hit and she says that this is not okay, that it takes time to get all her ducks in a row to be able to physically leave.
No, it doesn't. She can start today. She can start.
That's what I'm talking about. The decision to move today. She might not have a job today to be able to fund an apartment.
She doesn't have to have a job. She doesn't have to have a job. She just has to start reaching out, right? Letting people.
That's what I'm talking about. And she might not have somebody to go to today. So she still has to come up with a plan. You and I are saying the same thing, as in there needs to be a plan to be able to leave.
What I would say when she said she doesn't have a job, she doesn't have to have a job. Right? All she has to do to begin with is reach out, because we're trying to do this in a physical reality, and it's not physical, it's energetic. Once you make that decision, things move, the universe moves. She puts action out there. She gets on Facebook, she gets on and just goes into chat rooms, just letting people know someone is going to show up and help her, period. It will happen. I've seen it happen every time, because her energy is shifted. It's much different than saying, oh, I will, I'm going to, I'll get.
That's not what I'm saying.
All right. Well, what you're saying is that there's I'm just contradicting you in the fact that she doesn't have to have a job. She doesn't have to have any support right now. She's going to find it, and starting right away. Because if you put it, okay, well, good. We're on the same page then. I misunderstood because you were saying
it's a different semantic, but we are definitely saying the same thing. That staying is not tolerable. Yes. No, you and I are saying the same thing. It's just different semantics of what I'm saying versus how you're perceiving what I'm saying, and then what you're saying and versus what I'm perceiving that you're saying. But the message is the same.
Yeah. Because we're saying the same thing. We got to get out, and we got to take action immediately. Never set a goal or say you're going to do something without doing something towards its completion. Now you start momentum and everything changes, right? Yeah. But I think we've got to be emphatic though with people. Just say, look, nobody can physically hit you, right? No, it's just a no, right? And it gets a little extreme sometimes, because someone brushes past you, or maybe just grabs your hand and say, hey, come here a second. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about physically hurting someone and abusing them, right? And that's just, you can't do it. And we can't believe or hope that they're going to change, because the likelihood is they won't.
Agreed.
And they'll do it again, right? I mean, it's
what
sad.
Do you think with the younger generation? How do you teach the younger generation with what's acceptable behavior and what's not?
Yeah, well, it's really very much the same, and a lot of it comes from environment. I mean, these kids see violence all over the place, right? And they see, um, I mean, what's the thing? What do they call it? Toxic masculinity, where men,
Define
and
it.
especially with these, these people, and I don't need to name names, but there are individuals that have got massive followings.
Well, can you define what toxic masculinity is? Because again, like what we were talking about, what it means to be a man, there's all these terms, but not a lot of people know how to define what
I know.
that means.
Yeah, but I think this phrase toxic masculinity has gone too far. Young boys are feeling alone. They're feeling neglected. They're feeling like they can't say or do anything without a woman's backlash. And it's true. Women can say anything about men, but you say anything about women, and you are, what do they call it? Banned from society. You're ostracized. It's gone too far, and we need to bring it back into balance. Listen, we can
So
criticize.
define that for me. Define what that means. Not what does toxic masculinity mean, as in like when men can't or boys can't feel like they can say anything. I mean, like what would
it's not just boys, it's men. It's the
right?
whole
So what would
men.
be healthy? First of all, define what toxic masculinity means. What do you mean by toxic masculinity?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know that I defined it yet, but I would assume that women mean when someone's being toxically masculine, that they are being a misogynist, that they are,
What does that look like?
Well, I don't know. You'd have to tell me. I think it's different for everybody. But what I'm seeing is this: women can say, "Oh, men are disgusting." But if a man said, "Oh, women are disgusting," that would be a riot. It would be, you can't say that about women. It's too lopsided. It's way too lopsided. It surprises me that you can't see that. Women talk about men very poorly, very badly.
I didn't say that I can't see that. I didn't say anything about it. I'm asking you to define.
Well, I just did. I just gave you an example, right? Where women can say anything they want about men, but men can't say things about
No. What does toxic masculinity mean? What is it to be?
Well, I just said being misogynistic, right?
That's what I was saying. Give me an example of what misogyny is.
I'm not really the best person to ask because, but I would just say almost like racism, really, right? You can't do this because you're a woman, or, we're all, you hear this, it's kind of started as a joke, I think, but a lot of men say this now. One of the men that I'm talking about with you that has got these men under his spell, they would say, women can't drive. Women shouldn't be allowed to vote. I mean, these are just ridiculous things, right? But that's that's toxic masculinity or misogyny, right?
That's why I'm having you or asking you to explain it, because I want the healthy versions of what this looks like coming from a healthy man, right? That's why I'm asking you to spell that out for what it means to be toxic versus what it means to be a healthy masculine man.
Yeah. So the other side of that is when a woman is coming out of a building or a store and a man opens the door and I don't need you to open the door. He's just being a gentleman. He's being nice and kind. He's not because he doesn't think you can open the door, right? He knows you've got the ability physically to open the door, but he's doing something nice and being a gentleman. And very often women will say, I don't need that. I don't like that. I mean, that is, to me, that's toxic femininity.
Agreed. Everybody opens the door for me. I love it. I will, like with my boys, I will go stand in front of the door and just stand there if they haven't.
Yeah, and that's what
it's not because I can't open my own door. And again, the women that, because we're talking about healthy versus unhealthy women, right? Yeah. Healthy women acknowledge that and recognize that and don't say anything negative towards that, right? Versus unhealthy women that might feel, I don't know, that there's an expectation. So they're like, no, thank you. There's that immediate rejection with no, thank you. I don't need that. I don't want that.
I think some women would take offense to say that's healthy. I would say it's healthy, right? But I can tell you, and I can tell you, most of the guys that I know on more than one occasion have done that and been treated badly by a woman for opening the door. So it's there in our society. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't mean it's healthy. But that's my point. I think we've got unhealthy on both sides of the equation. It's not just one or the other. And I think the sooner we stop this, and I know you get it, it's not men against women. It's not women against
At
men.
all.
But
No.
we have that. We have that right now to a large extent in our society. And we need to heal it. You know, we've got to stop listening to people who are going to drive us to that point. You know, in a lot of ways, these relationships are relationships. You know, people have a relationship with their politics. I mean, for me, I come from other countries like, well, every time they say something, they're wrong. That's impossible. They can't be wrong every time. And the other side say something and they're wrong every single time. That just doesn't make any sense. It's nonsense, right? So how do we come to the middle ground where we can say, let's just go with the best ideas? Let's work together to work on the best ideas, not make the determination of whether we're going to agree with it based on their political party. That doesn't make any sense. We're living in an insane world.
Right. So that's why we're doing this, is to add that thing out there, right? Have somebody out there.
This is what we've got in society, though. Men against women. Men are, women are, and it's just not healthy. And I think the sooner we can have, you know, you and I are in there trying to get in the trenches and say, look, every time a man does something, it doesn't mean he's wrong. Every time a woman does something, doesn't make it wrong.
Right. Generalizations of any kind is black and white thinking, which is a defense mechanism, right? So we teach against that. So give me, like, what does it mean to be a healthy masculine man?
Well, again,
We're going to use this platform to spread the good stuff and not the nasty shit.
I know what it means for me. I don't know what it means for every woman. Right?
That's all we're talking about. What does it mean for you?
For me, it's taking care of your partner and her taking care of you. There are certain areas that we're going to be the stronger one, and there's certain areas where she's going to be the stronger one. Just making sure she's okay, listening to her, right? Not always trying to fix her problems, letting her know that you are hearing her and you're there, but you're not going to fix it. Letting her know that, for me, it's like, making her feel beautiful, appreciated, making her feel seen, noticing the things she's doing, notice the things she's wearing, notice her as a person, as an individual. That's a healthy man who can do that, not trying to dominate for domination's sake, who she knows she's safe with you, that she can rely on you, that she can trust you, that you're not going out and talking to your friends in a derogatory way. You're not speaking of her badly. Even though you may not agree with her in company, you would never say that in company. You would always support her. That if you're alone, maybe later you might say, hey, I heard what you said about that. Just so you know, I don't necessarily agree with that. If you want to talk about it, let's chat. But privately, right? Never diminish your partner in front of your children, Always be a united front. Don't ever let your children come between you. Don't let them think that, if I go to mom after dad said no, I can get mom to say yes. That's not good, right? You're teaching them that they can get their own way by manipulating their parents. So you got to be a united front. So these are things to me that create a healthy relationship and a healthy behavior. It's just some.
And to me, it sounds like everything that you're saying would go towards any relationship. Right. Not just with a man and female, but with men, even to have friendships where you listen to each other, you recognize when there's something good about the other person. If the cologne smells good, if the outfit looks great, if you're being successful, calling out all those things, allowing yourself to say, when you said this is what I thought. If you're up to talking about it. Right. I feel like all the things that you described.
What you asked me was, what is a healthy masculinity, right? And that's what I was describing. I would absolutely agree. It goes both ways. I do think men and women are different, though, right? So what do I mean by that? Well, a man doesn't necessarily need to feel protected by his spouse, right? He doesn't necessarily need to feel heard. There are some differences that you need to adapt to the person, whether she's male or female. But on this, at the same time, you want to speak well of people. Yeah, I mean, men and women are guilty of talking badly about their spouse. They hang out with their friends and they complain about the person. Not a good idea. That's toxic, right? It's toxic.
I'm saying outside of the spouse relationship,
Oh,
a married or a romantic relationship. I do feel that part of the loneliness that my clients have spoken about, or my guy friends have spoken about, is that they do want to feel heard. They do want to feel like what they say and what they think is valued in society.
yeah, but again, I don't want to split hairs, but it's much more on the women's side that they don't feel heard. Men don't necessarily complain a lot about not being heard. Women do, right? They really do. They complain the man doesn't listen to them. He doesn't. He tries to fix everything they do. That's much more common than a man saying, "I don't feel heard." Much more common, right?
So
I'm
we're not talking
saying,
about man versus woman. We're just talking about like men's needs in general.
well, I'm just saying that because you said it, right? You said men don't usually, men do complain about being heard, right? And I said before, women need to be heard more than men. I didn't say men don't need to be heard, but I'm just saying it's a prevalent thing that women complain about not feeling heard much more than men, right? That's all I'm saying.
Right. So what I was saying is the things that were described in a man and a woman relationship can go into just all relationships, right?
Of course, but you asked me what is a man being masculine, healthy masculinity in a relationship. So that's why I was saying that.
Oh, I wasn't asking about a romantic relationship. I was just talking about in relationships.
Yeah,
Friendship,
well, of course,
platonic,
yeah.
work,
I mean, I didn't necessarily have to be married. I'm just saying those are things. You asked me what is a healthy masculinity, and
right. And that's why I was saying that also generalizes and values in all relationships.
masculinity. So where do you want me to define healthy masculinity? Where do you mean you want me to talk about that?
Within the man.
Well,
Just the man.
So where specifically in the man do you want me to describe healthy masculinity? Because my initial thought was, well, women complain about toxic masculinity, which I said, and you said, well, what's healthy masculinity? So my immediate assumption was, how is a man healthily masculine when he's in a relationship with a woman? But I'm happy to describe it anywhere if I can. Where would you like me to say this is healthy masculinity in what area of life?
A man just existing, not in a relationship with a woman per se, just, a man existing in the world and embodying healthy masculinity.
Okay. So being responsible, being accountable for their words, for their actions, not blaming other people, right? And constantly looking to improve themselves as an individual, as a person, as a soul, as a spirit. I think those are healthy things that men do. I like to read. I'm saying I may not be the perfect example. I like to read. I like to spend time on my own. Most guys are like, why do you spend so much time on your own? I like it, right? And a lot of men.
But I think that's healthy. I think a lot of, men and women are both learning to just exist.
Yeah.
To exist, not because they're in a relationship with someone, right? Feeling that fulfillment within themselves and what that means.
Well, and that's how I used to be. I hate it when people say, oh, I'm perfect now. I'm not perfect, but I used to be very dependent on having a relationship. And I've been single for 4 years and I'm happy being single. I'm not even looking to be in a relationship, right? Which is strange for me, right? And so I understand a lot of men and women feel like they should be in a relationship. I mean, that's kind of what culture teaches us, right? If you're not in a relationship, there's something wrong with you, right? Which is not true, but it's kind of thrown on us that way. So I think, so when we're talking about healthy masculinity, I would say, be able to be alone, be able to be yourself. Don't feel like you need to be with someone. Feel like you want to be, And so for example, for me, and this is for me, right? Every time I was in a relationship, that person would become the focal point of my life to my detriment, right? And I wouldn't do other things because they become so important. That's codependency, right? So for me now, having had this experience for 4 years, my space, my freedom, These are all words that I use to describe it, right? Being with myself. I like my company, which I probably didn't before. I like being alone. And I think those are healthy masculine things. That's just my opinion, right? That's my opinion.
Right.
That's how I feel good about myself, about my masculinity. But then other people say, well, it's easy when you're on your own. I go, I know. That's why I'm keeping it that way. It's more, I think, difficult, right? It's more difficult to be in a relationship, because that when that comes along, usually there are big compromises. There's someone else living in your space, and you have to give that consideration. Maybe I'm selfish. I don't want to do that anymore, right? But the other reason, the underlying real reason for me, which again is not not necessarily, that doesn't make me sound good, but I don't. Here's my experience again, which doesn't mean it's real, but I find that if I'm in a relationship, like everybody goes through the honeymoon period, right? You can't keep your hands off each other. Everything's wonderful. They're perfect. But at some point through my experience, people start taking each other for granted. And I've said this in every relationship. Listen, we have something amazing. Yes, you can go to the honeymoon period if you want, but it doesn't have to be the honeymoon period. It's up to us to continue to do the things we did when we first met. If we don't start doing that, we're taking each other for granted, and the other person's thinking, well, was it ever real? Where's the person I met? That's the person I fell in love with, right? And people very often, not always, stop trying. They stop trying. They stop doing the things that made them attractive to each other. And so I'm at the point where, I'm in 66 years of age. I'm not like 18, right? So for me, I would never live with anybody again. I'll never marry anybody again. And I will date if I decide to, right? And for me, the reason that feels like a good idea is because you're always going to be looking forward to the date. You're not going to be like, what are we going to talk about? Because your life has been happening. So this is my remedy for me, right? That works. I haven't done it yet, but if I do get back out dating, this is how I'm going to do it, right? And let's see what happens. So, not everything is right for everybody, I guess, is a long way of saying that, and you got to decide what's right for you. But don't let society decide what's right for you. Just
Right.
because, everybody's got a girlfriend or a boyfriend, it doesn't necessarily mean it's right for you. Now, I went through 4 marriages, right? So I'm not the same person that I was then. So you can say, well, you made a lot of mistakes. I did. And I repeated a lot of patterns, and I did. Well, it doesn't mean you're going to do it again. I know, but I'm not that same person anymore.
Right.
It feels like I need to be in a relationship. Does that make
So
sense?
with that, yes, and I love that. Well, if you want to talk about how you got through that yourself with the codependency, how you healed from that?
Yeah. Well, the first book is a lot about that, right? I got my ass kicked, didn't I, really? All the things that I'd done in my 4 marriages all came out like in blaring lights, right? And I guess I stopped blaming, and I stopped saying, well, she did this or she did that. She didn't do anything. I brought it all into my life, right? And when I could start to see that and look in the mirror at how she was mirroring me, right? And showing me what I needed to heal. That was the beginning of that journey, right? Because you're going, oh, damn, I hadn't realized it did that, or not necessarily do that, but that's a part of myself that I'd given away. Or that was something that I was allowing, right? So, me getting intense about allowing because I allowed it, right? Now she didn't like, get me in a room and smack me around, but she was abusing me emotionally and she was abusing me mentally, but I allowed it. It was my fault. I never looked at it like it's your fault. It's I allowed that. So I have to take responsibility, and I'm never going to allow that again, right? So that's why I have a bit of a button on this. You got to figure it out, because I told myself, well, I can't put her on the street. I can't do this and I can't do that. And I wouldn't put her on the street. But my point is, there were things that I could do that I didn't, because at the back of my mind, this happens for a lot of people, I was saying, it's going to sound a little childish, but I'm going like, man, she's super hot, right? I got all these other things that are going great to justify not ending it, right? because it was, in a way, I would, at the time I would say it's because it's easier. It wasn't easier, right? It was harder, but my mind was telling me it's going to be easier to stay than it is to end it.
Yeah, I mean, that's where the stages of change we have to go through the stages from, right, pre-contemplation to contemplation to planning and then executing. And then sometimes there's a relapse. All of those are stages.
100%. And that's why I'm so adamant about the fact that I wasn't serious about ending it until I was. And there was nothing that anybody could have ever said or done before that I was ready, that I made that decision no more, right? Because, I mean, people told me, that people used to say to me, Stephen, you shouldn't even be in the same state as her, let alone the same room. And I'd be like, what do you mean, So it wasn't like this, the red flags weren't there, they were. But part of me in the end says, and this is why I have nothing but respect for people who go through this stuff. I don't judge it. It's like, when you're ready, you'll know. And then when you're ready, you'll do something, right? Until then, we're just exchanging air. But I recognize that these, we'll call them a toxic relationship. I call it a Venus flytrap relationship. It's not bad. It is not bad. It's doing you more good than being in a good relationship, because it's getting you to see the flaws that you need to look at. And, one of the things in your summary here, it says, central theme is that sustainable intimacy begins with personal healing rather than finding the right partner. Because if you haven't healed, you're going to take that in a relationship and you're going to attract the energy that you need to heal. And it's going to be rough. If you haven't healed that, it's going to be rough. So how can you possibly have a relationship, a healthy relationship, if you're not? If you're coming into that relationship carrying low vibrational energy, you're going to attract it, right? And then you're going to say, well, you get out of it and you go, well, I'm not going to date for 6 months. And you don't. And you go back in a relationship, you find the same person in a different body. And people say, how did I pull that off? There was nothing else that could have possibly happened. The only way it's going to change is if you change, and usually those patterns are created in our childhood, not always, but very often. And until we go back and look at it from a different perspective and heal it, I say, look, a pound of prevention is worth 1,000 pounds of, what do you call it? Healing, right? A pound of prevention. Just go into the process sooner rather than later, because otherwise you're going to act it out in your relationships, and that's probably not going to end well. And you don't want to go through four marriages like I did. That's not a good idea. And so
for all of that, I have, when I first prescribe to everyone, it doesn't, man, woman, it doesn't matter. After a long-term relationship, and if it wasn't a healthy one, it's be by yourself for a year.
Mm-hmm.
Work on yourself. Let's work on all the things to make you you, right? What is your foundation? What are your values? What do you like to do? What brings you joy, right? All of these things that a lot of people can't articulate because they haven't had the time to just be by themselves and then figure that out, or experience life enough on their own to say, actually, this wasn't mine. I thought I liked this, but I really don't. I was just making sure that their needs were taken care of.
Yeah.
And I get a lot of pushback from people because, again, it's uncomfortable being by yourself.
Yeah.
With what am I healing? What do I like? What about me do I need to? Why can't I do that with somebody else?
Yeah.
So what would be your counter to that?
Yeah, a few. But I mean, the funny one would be, so I'm sure you were trying to do this when you're in a relationship, right? And they're going to go, yeah. And how did that work for you? It doesn't. It doesn't work, because your partner can't be your therapist, right? And nor should you expect them to be. It's not fair to them, right? They may be going through their own stuff. You've got to deal with your stuff with the right person. And the best way to do that is when you're not in a relationship. There's so many things that could go wrong if you're trying to do that in a relationship, because the other person, I don't know who they are, but they may not want you to heal. And they're not going to support you. And they're going to say negative things about it, and notice what you do and think and say when you come back. And they're going to criticize it. And they're going to hold you back because they don't want to lose the person that they got in the first place. They don't know how you're going to turn out. You might not love them anymore. So I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's going to be highly unlikely, and it's going to be very difficult. The best thing to do is what you just said, and I didn't want to say that, you come out of a relationship, you go back to the same one. If you go through the healing process, you probably won't, right? You're going to heal yourself. So next time you get, you're going to be a totally different person, right? Unfortunately, many people just think it's just not being in a relationship, and they're going to, they're just not going to meet anybody like that again, and they don't work on themselves. So absolutely. And I said, prevention, a pound of prevention is worth 10 pounds of cure, right? It's much easier to prevent it in the first place than it is to have to just get over something or someone and then start the process. But, so sooner rather than later, right? I just say to people, and if you go to a therapist and they say there's nothing wrong with you, let's see if that happens first, right? Let's see if there's nothing to fix. And if there is, do it. And if they say, listen, you got a clean bill of health, it's like, thank you very much. Now I know.
Right. And I think social support during that time is really important also. You can have, and most of the time they don't have the friends, the extra friends, or just anyone else to turn to and talk to, because a lot of their energy has been their identity within a romantic relationship instead of social constructs with, coworkers, you have hobbies, there's so many different aspects of our lives that people neglect when they're, I don't know, when they're in a romantic relationship that I think needs to be, brought back to life. And it takes a year to do that.
Yeah. A couple of things there. You got to have friends. You have to have friends, right? You can never rely on one person for everything. Unfortunately, that does happen a lot in a relationship dynamic where, there's all kinds of relationships, but very often there's one that's more giving than the other, and there's one that's more taking. Very often, not always, but it happens a lot. And the one that wants to take is going to find a way to isolate you, and the one that wants to give is going to allow them to do it, right? But you can't give yourself away. It doesn't mean you can't love someone, but love yourself first. Right? Make sure you do. And listen, but I'm talking from experience because I did it the wrong way, right? I gave myself away, right? So, and I know where that leads, and I know what signs to look for now. I know how I did it gradually. So be conscious of that. There's nothing wrong loving someone, but you got to love yourself, and you got to make sure you do the things that make you who you are. And sometimes you're going to have to say no, honey, I can't do that right now. I need to go to the gym. I do it regularly, and I need to go now. So I'm disciplined. I got to, take care of myself, whatever it is. Right. And then the other thing I'm cautious about, you've got to have friends. Yes. But do friend things. Don't turn your friends into your therapist.
Right. Now, your therapist is your therapist, and that's it.
Therapist is your therapist. Yeah. And all too often, I think both sides do. Right. I think they start talking to their friends and trying to get advice. I'm like, they're not the person to get advice from. Right.
Right.
And they might have an ulterior motive. You just don't know. It doesn't make them a bad person. Right. But don't put them in a place where they've got to be something for you that they're not supposed to be. Right. They're not going to have neutrality, and sometimes, they can feel bad for you. Oh, it's a shame. And they'll agree with you. Oh, yeah, she did that. She's a bitch, right? Or he's a nightmare, or whatever it is. That's not helping. It's not helping, right? It's not helping.
Even us as therapists, I don't use my friends as my therapists. Even the therapist friends I have as therapists. We don't do that to each other because they're not objective. They can't.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yeah. So, and the reason I'm just saying that is because you and I know that. I'm just thinking whoever's listening, don't take
your absolutely.
Right. Yeah.
Because there is that misconception, and I appreciate you bringing that up because, people think that us therapists, we're just, therapizing everybody all the time. No, we need to turn it off. Habiba as a friend is very different than Habiba as the therapist, right? Yeah. Or Habiba as a mom or Habiba as a partner is very different than Habiba as a therapist, as we should be.
Of course. Right? Yeah. But people, I know what you mean, because people think something, look at you go, are you psychoanalyzing me right now? I'm giving it
always the first thing that comes out of anybody's mouth when I meet them for the first time. No, I'm off work right now. Thank you very much.
Exactly. You got better things to do for now. Yeah, it's like a football player comes off the football field and you accept him to start passing you the ball. What are you doing? Right? He doesn't do that. He puts the game behind him, puts his perfection behind him and moves on. Yeah. Yeah. But, the man-woman thing, man, it's complicated, right? It's like there's not, and that's what makes our job so enthralling and fulfilling, because people say, well, what are you going to do? I have no idea. I don't know what I'm dealing with. I don't know what your situation is, your circumstances. I don't know anything about how you were raised. I don't know what your values are. I don't know what your beliefs are. I got to be able to help you coming from where you are and then help you where you want to go. Right. And people say, oh, because what they want is for you to say, I'm going to use this kind of technique on you or whatever. Oh, yeah, that won't work for me. It won't work for me. And you go, how do you know if you've never done it? Right. So I just don't get into that anyway. And I can't until I know the person and I've identified, and same for you, I know, right? You're going to identify where you can help them. They're not always going to come out and say, oh, well, I need help here, here, here. A lot of people will come and say, I don't need any help. I'm just here because someone told me I needed to go, right? Or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are the most difficult because there's really nothing you can say. They're not ready.
No,
They don't
exactly.
want to. They don't think that there's anything wrong with what they're doing. Yeah. And if they don't think there's anything wrong with what they're doing, it's not going to change.
No, I tell them that. I say, listen, you're busy. I'm busy, right? I don't want to waste your time and I won't let you waste mine, right? If you're not really ready to make a change, it's okay. Doesn't make you wrong. I know I've been in that place, right? It's okay. But if and when you do feel like you want to make some change, you identify some areas that you're not getting the results you want, let me know and we'll talk. Because it's true, you can't have, and then you get frustrated. You can't force them to change, right? They either want to, it's in them. They've made a decision they want to change. They don't necessarily have to know where. They just, I don't know what my problem is, but I know it's not working and I want to fix it. I just need your help and guidance as to where is the problem and how do I fix it? And then you've got someone who is willing to do the work, right?
Right.
But someone that just comes and says, I don't know, I got nothing wrong with me. I'm fine, right? Now we're in a little bit different territory, right?
Well, I think that's a big part of even all the things that we've talked about in this podcast is, helping people understand, because a lot of times they don't have the definition for what that means.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
This is not working, but I don't know what it's supposed to be instead. Yeah. Or I don't even know how to articulate what I'm doing. Oh, there's a word for that. What? Right?
Yeah.
So helping people know how to define a lot of these things, I think, is the first step. Being able to dissect it and think through it and define for themselves what that means, I think, is very, very important. So thank you for helping me do that today.
Well, here's the thing. I feel like when I'm saying these things, like people think, oh, he's always been that. No, I was completely doing everything the wrong way. I had never even looked at my childhood to identify where some of these patterns had come from. But once I did, I'm like, holy hell, yeah. And if I'd have known that, I might not have been married 4 times. But, so there was a lot of things that affected those marriages, not just one. But one of the primary things was when I was a kid, it was a very stressful home environment. I just didn't feel like I could move, right? I felt like I was in a straitjacket, which I ended up in a straitjacket. Funny. Anyway, so all I wanted to do was run away. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't argue my way out of it. I couldn't say to my parents, whatever it was, right? I just went into overwhelm. And whenever I was overwhelmed, what did I want to do? I wanted to run away. So when I was married and I could see things were going the wrong way or, getting out of balance. And then I just feel like I get overwhelmed. And then you think it's permanent, right? When you're overwhelmed, you just think it's going to be permanent. And I ran away. I didn't think that to myself. I didn't consciously say, I'm so overwhelmed now, like I was when I was a kid, so I'm going to run away from the overwhelm. I didn't say that. I just did it. And I didn't understand what I was doing, exactly what you said. I didn't know what I was doing. But, after 4 marriages, I knew something was wrong, right? Because it was past the point of people saying, if you get divorced, people say, well, what was wrong with her? And you might say, well, she did this, this, and this. Okay. Second time, what was wrong with her? Third time, fourth time, you go, okay, it's me, right? Obviously, I got something to look at. I got nowhere to go now. So sometimes we learn the hard way, right? We take some hard falls. But it doesn't mean we're a bad person. It just means, and I say to people, look, you don't have a relationship problem. You just have a pattern problem. If we find out where the pattern came from, we can heal it and you're going to be fine. It's not a big deal. And so people, and the reason I say that is because if you're going through a rough time in a relationship, don't feel bad. It's part of your journey of healing. You have to recognize, you have to go through some tough times to get to the point where you're ready to heal, right? And you have to go through experiences in life, to know up, you got to know down, left to know right, hot to know cold, good to know bad, sadness to know joy. You got to, and that's what really gives the beautiful tapestry to life. But the biggest thing is, and this is what I've always been able to say to myself since I was a little kid, this too shall pass. I'll get. And every time I've gone through a terrible time, very traumatic, there's another side to it. And I've grown from it. Not as quickly as I probably should, but I grew from it, right? I got another experience out of it. And so the downside of that, it's always made me I'll take a lot of risks, right? I've always taken a lot of risks in my life because I think, even if the worst happens, I'll be okay. I'll figure it out. Now I'm at an age where I'm not that risk taker anymore. I don't want to take those kind of risks. I don't have 30, 40 years left to get over it. And I don't have the physical body to get over it like I did when I was younger. So that also changes you, right? So life molds us, but it doesn't define us, right? It will refine us, but it doesn't define us.
And I think what you're doing with your books, with your coaching, with even sharing your information with us here today, you're teaching people and helping people understand a different perspective of a different way of being, right? And I think if everyone who's healthy, who's done the work, who understands themselves in that way, are able to use that as guidance, I think the younger generation will be much better off because of it. Thank you.
I hope so. But I mean, one of the biggest things for me as well, I don't know how you feel about it, is I'm reminding myself. Right? I'm reminding myself because when I'm sharing it with somebody, sometimes I go, holy shit, I've not been doing that. I need to do that. Right? That's a good reinforcement, right? So I do it for myself and I do it for others. And, but I don't do it. This sounds a little, anyway, I'm just going to say, I don't do it for the money. I do it because I want to help. Now, do I get paid? Damn right I get paid. But if I was just doing it for the money, I would do it for anyone and everyone, and I wouldn't feel fulfilled because I know I'm not going to help. I'm not helping them, right? So I'm doing it for both. I am doing it for the money because I got to get paid, right? I do like money, and I don't mind earning it, but I want to do it in a way that is helpful and not just because I'm getting a paycheck or getting money out of it. There's a balance. Right.
Absolutely. You need money to exist.
You do. You do. Yeah. But some people, sometimes they say this, and I maybe because they're reflecting how I feel sometimes. But people will say, well, you're good at this. Why don't you just do it for free? And I'll say to them, well, what do you do for a living? And they'll say whatever they're doing. I said, why don't you do that for free?
Exactly.
You know what I mean? It's like, we all have to, like you said, you can't move without needing money, right? You put the lights on, you need money, and of course, you got to pay taxes, just in case the IRS are listening. So and why, what's wrong with leading a healthy, wealthy lifestyle? Be okay with the fact that you have the ability to generate abundance. We all do, right? But just some people have got it suppressed, and therefore not always, but often they resent other people creating abundance. To go off track a little bit here, and I'd be interested in your opinion about this, because this is a hot topic right now. How all these people hate trillionaires, right? Or billionaires, or even millionaires. There's this resentment towards people who create abundance. And they don't understand how money works. There are no trillionaires in the world. There are people that have assets that if they were to sell them all, you could say they're worth $1 trillion, but if they were to sell them all, they'd all crash in value and they wouldn't be worth that, right? So, and it's not like they're walking around every day with $1 trillion in their pocket or even in the bank, right? So they invest it, and no one wants to look at what they've done to create it. I mean, you either hate or love Elon Musk right now, it seems, right? And, people forget that he slept on the floor of his factory, that he took all the money he made from when he sold paychecks, and he was down to his last dollar to invest in a company that he believed could change the world. Okay. So now, are there people that are very wealthy that have done it at the cost of humanity? 100%, right? I mean, what we're doing about money in the world is terrible. Cutting down rainforests, leaving people starving when there's more than enough money and resources to feed everybody. But criticize them for that, not just because they made money, right? I think that's important. And
well, that's actually something we could do a whole nother podcast on.
Yeah, right.
If you're willing to, we can have you back on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what's great is we don't always agree. And sometimes we'll agree to disagree, but that's good, right? If everybody agrees with everything, you're like, that's not real, right? It's like a relationship. If you don't ever say argue, but if you don't ever disagree, what kind of a relationship is that, right? So I have strong feelings about a lot of things that I don't normally get to talk about, right? So I appreciate the fact that we can get to talk about these issues, because I am concerned and feel like I can help society or human consciousness with can we just freaking love each other, right? And not treat each other like we're the enemy or someone else is the enemy. That's where my passion comes from in these conversations, right? I want men and women to be respected.
Absolutely. I think it's
respect each other.
Valuing human dignity, right? It's just the basis.
That's a
baseline of reimagining what dignity looks like for both people. So
100%. Yeah. 100%.
Well, thank you to everyone for listening to us and our rants and the whole roller coaster that we've been through about, just a lot of things that plague understanding and human understanding and relationships right now. So thank you. And thank you again, Dr. Stephen.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm looking forward to doing it again down the road.
Fabulous.